Hey y'all. Okay, so this one is a really bad case. Um, the story I'm about to tell you is not only sickening, but it's disgusting. And this man should have been behind bars from the very beginning. And the justice system did not do justice, did not put these kids' lives or his victims' lives before this man. They let him get away with so much. I'm talking things that people today would have already been executed for. Now, we're going to talk about Wesley Allen Dodd. I don't know if you know his story, but we're about to get into some of it. Now, Wesley Allen Dodd was born July 3rd of 1961 in Washington. Wesley was a very dangerous man, and he was convicted of he was a serial killer and a sex offender who sexually assaulted and murdered 3 young boys in Vancouver, Washington in 1989. Now, he was finally arrested later that year after he tried to kidnap a 6-year-old boy from the movies, and somebody stopped him and he took off. Well, his mom's boyfriend seen the car that this man took off in and went after him and told the police. Well, when he was taken in for questioning, everything eventually came to light. And the stories that he had to tell were disgusting and gruesome. And you would not believe half of what was said or done. And this man was still walking out in the free world like nothing ever happened. Now, he had a lot of things to say. But we're going to go into a little bit of his past history to get to the current. Wesley was the oldest child of 3, and he lived with his parents and his 2 younger brothers. Now, he wasn't the only one in his family to get SA charges or any kind of that kind of stuff. There was another family member that did this as well, but just not to this extent. But he was already charged. Now, the police in that case, or the justice system in that case, didn't fail his victims. Now, when he was arrested initially, he said that there was no childhood trauma, no assault, nothing that was bad in his family. He grew up a happy kid and all of this kind of stuff. But later, after he was tried, when they found his journals and his diaries and stuff, it had a totally different tune. He felt like he was not really part of his family. He felt that his younger siblings always got the praise or the attention from his parents. He said he never heard "I love you." He even said that he don't think in his whole life that he has ever said "I love you" to anybody. So there was always some emotional disconnect. Now, in my opinion, things when there is, it's a learned behavior. Something has always happened or been said or have possibly even been done to these young boys to even have this kind of thought process. But I mean, who knows? This could come from anywhere, I'm guessing. Now, when we get into this case, it's going to blow your mind how much he got away with before he actually got charged and before he actually really, I guess, took any kind of credibility for anything that he had ever done. Now, when Wesley was younger, he said that he felt like he didn't fit in or in school, in life, anywhere he went, he didn't have any friends. He said that things were not easy for him, I guess, when it come by, but you'll understand, I guess, his mindful or mindset later on. Now, things are on a significant downfall. When he turns 13, he starts exposing himself to children in his neighborhood, and he gets arrested at the age of 15, but the police say, oh, well, it was just a teenage boy, excuse me, doing, teenage boy stuff, so he just needs counseling. So, of course, that's what they gave him. Now, he got away with it then. So then he started to babysit his friends, or his parents' friends' kids, or his cousin. And he said that he SM'd them any chance he got. And he SA'd them the entire time from a young age on, after the exposure didn't become enough of a thrill, basically, for him. So when all of this started, he moved very quickly. And these sadistic things, I call them, because they're really nothing else that you could call them, had started to come to light. Now, he was also reported in 81, when he was 20, of trying to kidnap two girls, where nothing happened. Somebody reported him for trying to kidnap them, and they did nothing. There was no police report, no, charges brought, nothing. He got away with it again. And now he's like, oh, look, all this stuff that I'm getting away with, and I'm not getting in trouble, so why not continue doing it? Now, he also enlisted into the United States Navy, and to no surprise, he was SAing kids and exposing himself also on base property of these kids whose parents were on base. Now, he got away with a lot of it, and then finally, one of the kids, he got into trouble, but it kind of just fizzled away after a while. And then he ended up trying to lure kids into a game of strip poker for $50. And that is when he actually got dishonorably discharged from the Navy. And the police were like, okay, that's enough. You're done. It's not going to fly anymore. You got to go. So then he decided, okay, I've got to find a new, area to do this. And he went and he moved into an apartment building where there was nothing but families. And he got away with SAing a toddler. And she was barely old enough to talk. And so the parent didn't file charges because they said it would have been too hard for her. And they didn't want to keep reliving or hashing out what he had done to her. So they wanted to give her a chance to move on. Now, again, of course, he got away with it then. And he also decided, hey, I'm going to get odd and end jobs so I can pay for stuff, but I can also have availability and flexibility to search out my next victims. So he started thinking, and he said, I'm going to start going to parks, and I'm going to find areas that I can lure these kids. And that's exactly what he did. He lured first a 9-year-old and a 10-year-old brother into the woods where he had and shoestrings, and he tied them to a tree after making them undress, and he did things to them that are unspeakable. And then he decided that he was going to them, and he left one right there, and the other brother passed on his way to the hospital. And of course, he fled the area after. Now, after all of this that has happened, and he got away with all of it, and he never had to really serve any time, and he, charges weren't there when they should have been, or whatever. Now, I don't understand how this man got away with it for this long, but he still did. So then he moved or went to a different town, and he lured a 5-year-old, away from the school and told him he would take him home. And somehow he got this child away from adult supervision, and the boy let him take him home where his older brother was there as well. And he tied him to the bedpost, and he essayed him as well as his younger brother, and took pictures of all the sadistic things that he did to this little boy, and wrote down every little detail so he could have memories of everything that he has done. Now, he then took one of the boys and him after he had passed in the closet. And then after that, he had took the body of the other one and put him in a trash bag and threw him into the bushes. And so all of this is happening on top of him trying to get away. But then he goes and he tries to start burning things to get rid of evidence. But he keeps one specific article of clothing in order to keep it as a trophy. That's what I was trying to get to. So he kept all of this stuff and wrote down all of this stuff to have trophies of these kids. And that is disgusting. Not only what he did to them, but to keep reminders of it. But I guess that was his mindset. I don't know. Now, he said that after a while, he decided he was going to lay low because now the police are really looking for who's murdered these boys. And he didn't want to get caught. And so he kind of said that he was in his apartment and he was planning his next attack to whatever kid he could get in touch, connect with or take or whatever. He was planning out how he was going to do things to him and how he was going to murder him, and all the way down to a T. Now, unfortunately for him, and fortunately for the youngest child, the 6-year-old that got away, he never got a chance to act out these sick, nasty thoughts. And when he tried to attempt, like I said, to take the 6-year-old boy from the movie theater, all of this stuff started coming out. Now, when the warrant was served, when he first started getting interviewed, he kind of denied all of this at first. And he was like, no, whatever. But when the boy pointed him out, then they had enough to get a warrant to go back to his home and start searching. When they searched his house, they not only found the pictures, the photo evidence, but all of the stuff that he kept, and also all of the news clippings of his murders and his assaults and all of this other stuff that had happened. Now, When the judge asked him after he was arrested, because this is finally the time that he gets like prosecuted, finally, when this should have happened a long time ago. But, court order counseling didn't work, obviously, and neither did, him spending any time in jail, even with how little a time that it was, didn't do anything to deter him. So when the judge actually finally asked him, why is it that you want to be sentenced to death? And he said, and I quote, and this is the craziest thing, because I will do whatever it takes to get out, even if that means killing the guards, to get back onto the streets to do what I've been doing. And the judge looked at him and said, okay, well, what is it that you've been doing? And he said, killing kids. And at first the judge was kind of stunned and shocked. And he said, you just said killing kids, right? And he said, yes. Because at first when he pled not guilty. And then later on, of course, he changed his tone and decided to plead guilty. Because his statement was he knew that he could not stop himself. And that the justice system had failed these children. And if he would have been and had to stay the lengthy prison sentences and the jail time that he was actually given in all of these cases, he would not have been released until 2026. Now, that would have been pretty much his whole life, if not his whole life, and he would have died in prison. And he said none of those boys would have been dead. Now, if you would have done your job, I wouldn't have been out there doing what I was doing. So he basically admitted that he got away with it for so long and got to enjoy doing what he did. Now, the judge gave him two options. One was lethal injection, and the other was a hanging. He decided that he wanted to be hung, and that was because that was his last victim. The way that he did him was hang him. And to me, that's kind of like getting to remember his last kill before death and getting to like lavish in that. So he got to do exactly what he wanted. And so he ended up getting hung on January 5th of 93 at 12:05 a.m. And a couple of minutes later, the coroner, of course, declared him dead. But I feel like, how could he have gotten away for so long with doing this? These boys didn't get to live out their life, and this man got to live out almost everything that he wanted, and he could have been stopped. But these little things like letting him get away with almost kidnapping 2 kids, or him getting away with all the MSs, that he ended up doing prior to, even from the time he was 13, the time that he was 16 and 15, the time that he was 20. I mean, those charges alone nowadays would get you life or close to it. And I guarantee you, if they'd have just asked him, he'd have probably just told them. But instead of that, they just brushed it off. Now, I want to hear what you think of this case. This was disgusting. This was horrible. I didn't hardly even want to do this one, but I thought that this one needed to be heard, not for the man that did this, but for the victims. They still deserved a lot more to life than what they got. And unfortunately, he got away with murder, in my opinion. Y'all have a good night.